let's talk about how to plan like a full-time author. This is something that I, as a full-time author, am just really terrible at. I'm really bad at it. And so this is as much a video for me as it is for anybody else, because it's actually really important. One of the biggest stumbling blocks, in my opinion, for anybody who's moving from part-time to full-time in anything, whether it's writing, whether it's making cakes, whether it's anything else, doesn't matter. When you're moving from amateur to professional or from part-time to full-time, there's something that happens in your head. There's something that shifts. And unfortunately, unless you have the systems in place to be able to deal with that shift, you can quickly get yourself into trouble. When you're operating in a mode where you're sort of starved for time and you have to fit what you're trying to do in around everything else, it becomes sort of matter of course that you're going to be pushing really hard in the time that you do have, right? So if you only have 2 hours to write and you really are trying to be a writer, then you're going to be writing for that whole 2 hours every single time you have the opportunity. But then when you move full-time, something happens. You all of a sudden have all of this, time. Now, some of you might be asking me, hey, Seth, why are you making this video? Because we're not full-time yet. We might not get full-time for a while. So why do we need to know about this now? It comes down to systems. James Clear has a great quote in his book, Atomic Habits, that we do not rise to the level of our opportunities, but we fall to the level of our systems. And this is absolutely true. See, if you are going to move full-time and you don't have the systems in place, then you will flounder. I know I certainly did. And everybody I've watched do the same thing. It's happened exactly the same way. All of a sudden, you have all of this time and you go one of two ways. You either think, oh, I've got plenty of time. I don't need to do anything. I can just push it off until later. And then you end up procrastinating and things don't get done. Or, if you're like me, you say, I have all this time. I can just double or triple or quadruple the amount that I'm doing because I can just do more of it. And then you end up practically burning yourself out and you don't get anything done. And so either way, if you don't have a system in place to allow you to methodically continue your work, you'll end up just burning out. On top of that, when you throw in things like having to plan projects or having to balance the difference between creator production and administrative production, there are all of these reasons that it becomes really difficult to plan properly. At the same time, if you can plan properly, you can get way more done. I can always tell the weeks that I have actually taken the time and I've actually planned properly because I get just a tremendous amount of stuff done. I'm certainly not the most productive person in the world, but my levels of productivity are, as a rule, exceptionally high compared to most people. Case in point, I think I've written 8 books this year so far, and it's not even the end of July yet. And all of that really comes because last year I finally buckled down and I set a system in place for my productivity, a way of planning and a way of organizing my writing so that I could get more done. So I really want to talk about 2 major things. The first is avoiding procrastination, and the second is adding buffer zones. Because while establishing a writing plan does help reduce stress and it helps improve your writing speed, there are a couple of things that we have to be very careful of. The first, again, is that tendency to say, well, I've got tons of time, and so I don't have to do it now. I can slack off. I can do something else. I don't really feel like it. Today's not a good writing day. I mean, how many times have I said that to myself? Way too many. And how many times has that prophecy come true? Because that's really what it is. When we say to ourselves, today's not a great writing day. I don't feel like writing today. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If, on the other hand, we move from the other direction and we say, hey, you know what? Today is a great day to get writing done, and regardless of how I feel about it, I'm going to do it, then we can often have great writing days, helping us to avoid the procrastination that comes with just having sort of endless free time. or at least the perception of endless free time. Then the second thing that we want to do is we want to build in buffer zones, because you can also fall off the wagon on the other side, which is what my tendency is, where you say, well, I've got all of this time, why don't I just fill it with more stuff? Why don't I just pack it in even more? And then you end up in a situation where you work and work and work and work, and you start burning out, and then your work is not as high quality, and it takes you longer to get things done, which means you then start overshooting your time estimates, and you end up not really productive anyways. And so in that case, building in buffer to be able to recharge creatively, to be able to rest and to maintain a steady pace, that's really what we want to be doing. But the question is, with all of this, how do we build a schedule? How do you organize your books? Well, here are a couple simple rules for you to follow and the methodology that I use. The first thing to do is to remember when books are due. Now, if you're self-published, you don't have to worry about this quite as much because obviously you can just publish your books whenever you want. But if you're working with a traditional publisher or a hybrid publisher, then it does matter a lot because you need to be able to write your books and have enough turnaround time that the publisher can do everything that they need to do, whether that's editing, whether that's cover design, whether that's audiobook production, whatever it is. And so you want to make sure that you have very clear dates and deadlines for when you will be turning your things in. And then you start to work backwards and you say, okay, how many months do I have? How many days of writing is that equal to? And you want to be careful here because I don't typically write on the weekends. If I were to say my month was 30 days, then my math would be all off and it wouldn't work, right? So make sure you're understanding how many days you're actually going to write. If you only write 3 days a week, or if you only write 1 day a week, that's okay. You just have to understand how much you write in a given month. Once you've done that, determine how many hours during the day reasonably that you can write. So if you say, I can write 4 hours a day, which was honestly pretty good, and that's what I was doing when I was part-time. I would write 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night. Sometimes 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the middle of the day during my lunch, and then 2 hours at night. But regardless of what you're doing, write that down. So you now have a simple equation. How much can I write every month? Which is just the number of hours times the number of days. Now what I want you to do is I actually want you to cut that number in half. And then I want you to determine how many words you can get in each one of those hours. So for instance, if I can write 4 hours a day for 20 days, then I'm going to be having 80 hours of writing during a given month. But I'm going to cut that in half. So now I'm talking about 40 hours of writing, and then multiplying that by my average word count for an hour of writing. Let's say that I can write 500 words every half an hour. That's 1,000 words an hour. And if I have 40 hours of writing over the course of a month, that will be 40,000 words. Now, why am I having you cut the number of hours that you can write in half? Because 40,000 is a lot less than 80,000. It's because in reality, you're almost always going to overestimate the amount of time that you actually have to write. Everybody does this. It's not something that is a mark against you. It's just that we always overestimate the amount of time or the amount of productivity that we're going to have. So by using that model where we cut the number in half and set the standard lower, we're actually doing ourselves a favor. Because anything you do above 40,000 words, which is now your baseline, is going to be fantastic. And I would rather you win every single month because you're getting over that number than constantly fall short of meeting your goal. Now, if you have 40,000 words a month and you are writing a 100,000 word novel, it's really easy to see how many months you're going to need in order to write the novel. And the answer is 3 or 2.5, but you understand what I'm saying. Now, if you're actually writing 80,000 words every month, then you're going to cut that time in half, which is pretty fantastic. Just over a month to write a novel is frankly amazing. But by planning to do it over 2.5 months, you're going to be giving yourself the buffer room you need. while also maintaining the pressure to write regularly, write according to your schedule. Now, not everybody has that much time, right? Some people are going to be writing a couple hours a week, and that's okay. All you're trying to do is determine how long it's going to take you to produce the work. And because we've worked backwards from the date when we know it's due, all of a sudden we have a really clear schedule, how much we have to work in order to complete it. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Math is not my strong suit, so if I got any of the math wrong, I apologize, and hopefully editor AJ will be able to fix it for me. But that's how I set up my schedule. It's just a very simple equation. How much time is it going to take me, and when is it due? After pinning the date, you work backwards, you determine how much time you have to write, cut it in half, multiply it by your basic hourly word count, and you have a very clear picture of when you need to start writing and when you will be finished writing. If you have any particular questions about this topic, definitely leave them in the comments below. I'd love to make more videos on this if it would be helpful to you.